Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's kick off this video with a story about a grocery store employee who, after 7 years of biting his tongue for the sake of customer service, finally finds himself in a situation where he doesn't have to hold back. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. She let her kid dent a car and thought she could just drive away. I, 27-year-old male, worked at a local grocery store from 16 to 23 before graduating from university and was a well-known employee by most all of our customers. I had maybe 4 negative encounters throughout my 7-year stint there, but because we were extremely customer-oriented, I would bend over backwards even for the worst of our patrons. Keeping my mouth shut for so long in a customer service job had finally caught up to me when I knew I was about to triple my income overnight. I had accepted a job and was going to be moving out of state in a week when this happened. I was off work for the day, but my mother needed some groceries picked up and I decided to go get them for her. The parking lot of our store was on a slope and we often had issues of runaway carts hitting cars. It usually wasn't a big deal and people would leave a note indicating what happened with their number. As I'm packing up the car with my bags, I look over and see a kid riding the cart down the parking lot, and I let out a chuckle. Come on, everyone does it. My laugh immediately stopped and I noticed he was going full speed towards a pretty beaten down car that happened to belong to one of my coworkers. He hit it full force and left a sizable dent in the driver's side door. His mother appeared out of nowhere, looked around, and quickly took the cart to the area where we store them. I'm sitting in my car watching this happen, thinking, please God, leave a note. Please don't make me say something. Sure enough, she gets back to her car and opens the driver's side door. Me. You are gonna leave a note, aren't you? Lady. What? Me. Your kid hit that car and left a mark. You need to do something about it. Lady. Mind your own business. It's not even noticeable and I don't have paper or a pen to write my information down on. Me. If you're not going to say something, then I am. At this point, I lost it, mainly because I only had a week left working there and because I realized I was at the store, but not wearing my work attire and had dreamed of a moment like this for years. Me. You're good with teaching your kid it's okay to damage someone's property and not take responsibility for it? What kind of person does that? What kind of role model are you being? You need to go in the store and tell someone. Lady, leave me alone, I'm leaving. At this point, I get out of my car and start walking towards her. She gets in, rolls the window down, flips me the bird, yells, F you, and speeds off. I got a picture of her license plate and told our store manager and the employee what had happened. His insurance took care of it, but I wish she had to pay some kind of price. She had every chance to do the right thing, and she chose to be a garbage human instead. And honestly, the fact that she flipped you off and sped off instead of just owning up to it makes it 10 times worse. And our second story. Boss insisted I ignore safety rules, so I used his own logic against him. I was a part-time supervisor for a package moving company that moves those brown packages. Prior to running an aircraft unload crew, I spent a couple years in the training department training new employees on ramp/tarmac operations and was very familiar with the air operation manual that covers every aspect of the ramp/aircraft load-unload operations. In that manual, it explains the proper procedure and timing for approaching and putting up the aircraft stairs when an aircraft arrives. One section deals with aircraft that do not have auxiliary power units. Older aircraft that do not have these do not have the ability to open the cargo door without ground power attached. For that reason, when the aircraft comes to a stop, the pilot sets the parking brake and the ground crew blocks the front tires only. At this point, the aircraft is supposed to shut down the engines on the side of the doors. The manual says the ground crew supervisor must visually confirm those engines are shut down prior to anyone or anything approaching the aircraft or putting up crew stairs. One day, I arrive for the supervisor pre-operations meeting, and I'm instructed that I must instruct my crew to put up the crew stairs as soon as the front tires are blocked. I tell my supervisor that this isn't the proper operation, and he informs me that this comes from the division manager. He tells me, well, that is what I was told to do, so that is what I'm telling you to do. I proceed to his boss, the manager, and show him the operations manual and explain that it isn't what it says and that it's unsafe to approach any aircraft that has engines running. That manager tells me if you disagree to take it up with the division manager. So I march my butt down to the division manager's office and show him the operations manual, and he tells me that because the aircraft is stopped and the front wheels blocked, that the engines on that side are being shut down so the stairs could go immediately up and ignore the 20 seconds it takes to make sure the engine is spun down and is off. I'm told I will do it this way as he's the division manager, and that's it. Malicious compliance. Go out to unload aircraft with my crew and explain that I don't want you to be unsafe, but we are going to put the new rule to the test. I told them all to be ready and to move extra quickly to block the tires as soon as the plane stopped, and as soon as it was blocked to put the stairs up as fast as possible and be mindful in case something went wrong. I flew up those stairs to greet the engineer that usually, without stairs there, cracks the door so he can peek out and open the cargo door. Needless to say, I scared the crap out of the engineer when he cracks the door and I pull it open and say hi. Slightly stunned, he says hello and gives me the wait one moment. He opens the cargo door and then waves me inside. He asks me, why are the stairs up and why are you there? I explain what I wrote above to him, and he shakes his head and says, OMG, no. He says, come with me and tell the pilot and co-pilot. I tell them the division manager's reasoning, and the pilot says, there are many reasons why we might leave those engines running, and that while normally they're shut down as soon as the brake is set, that isn't always the case. I told him I agreed, and I tried to do something about it. Pilot looks at me and says, I got you. I'll walk upstairs right now and threaten to grieve it through the pilots' union. I thanked him, and the next day the division manager had changed his mind and we went back to doing it properly. Division manager didn't know it was me who threw him under the bus for not listening to me. Every single rule in that manual is there for a reason. Most of these rules were paid in blood. To not know them all at all times is acceptable. To not look the relevant ones up before an operation is unprofessional. To willingly ignore them is highly negligent. To instruct others to ignore them is, or should be, outright criminal. And our last story. Nightmare neighbor finally got what he deserved. When my family moved into our house in 2010, it felt like something out of a dream. The snow-covered 1890s Queen Anne mansion looked like a fairy tale, complete with a turret, whimsical hedges, and a spacious backyard. We were completely enchanted by it, and the neighborhood seemed just as magical. Victorian mansions lined the street, each one with its own unique charm. Our new next-door neighbor, Alan, had a very different interpretation of home ownership. At first glance, his property didn't look too bad, but once the snow melted, it was like something out of a horror movie. His neglected house, littered yard, and swamp-like pool were a stark contrast to the rest of the street. The first time I met him, he was hosing down my cat for daring to step foot in his garbage-strewn yard. Alan was short, built like a bowling ball, and reeked of someone who didn't believe in showers. He drove a beat-up Miata plastered with racist bumper stickers and immediately launched into a rant about how he was suing a roofing company because his roof didn't survive a storm. We quickly realized Alan wasn't going to be a normal neighbor. A few months in, Alan made it his full-time job to be a nuisance. He hovered over the fence, eavesdropping on our conversations, complained about our trees, and randomly disappeared for months at a time. Then a fall storm ripped off part of his roof. Instead of actually fixing it, Alan nailed a tarp over the gaping hole and called it a day. His lawsuit against the roofing company, which was completely baseless, was apparently going to solve everything. When winter came, he abandoned the house. Apparently living under a tarp wasn't part of his grand plan, so he rented an apartment every winter and returned every spring to his ever-decaying home. This cycle repeated for years. The lawsuit never went anywhere, and his house slowly turned into an uninhabitable wreck. He stopped even pretending to live there full-time, only showing up to park more junk cars in his garage and install security cameras. The pool? Still a festering pit of sewage, which he periodically pumped onto the street, making the entire neighborhood reek of filth. Then Alan decided to make things worse. At some point, Alan realized he was completely broke. His house was falling apart, his lawsuit was a joke, and he was running out of places to go. Instead of making reasonable choices, he doubled down on being an insufferable piece of garbage. One day, he returned with a new car, no idea how he afforded it, and for some inexplicable reason, a dog. He chained the poor thing in his yard, named it after a racial slur, and left it outside in the scorching sun all day. It had no shelter, barely any food, and howled through the night. I couldn't stand it. When Alan was gone, I hopped the fence to give the dog food and water. It took about a week before he caught me. Alan, furious, brandishing a gun, "Get the hell off my property!" Me, "Then stop treating your dog like garbage." That was enough to make him rethink chaining the dog up all day, but the poor thing was still neglected and miserable. I was one step away from just leaving the gate open and letting it escape to a better home. By now, the entire neighborhood was fed up. The city had tried to get him to clean up his property more times than I can count. The pool was a biohazard, his roof was still a tarp, and we had petitioned the city to condemn the house. Alan, in his infinite wisdom, decided his rotting death trap of a home was worth $2.5 million. Yes, million. The city laughed in his face and offered him $50,000 to take it off his hands. He refused. Then one final storm hit, and this time the tarp didn't hold. The inside of the house became a soggy, mold-infested wasteland overnight. Alan panicked. He had no money, no job, and no way to even pretend the house was livable. The city officially declared it condemned. With no other options, Alan was forced to sell his home for pennies. Instead of millions, he got just enough to pay off some of his debts. He vanished overnight, probably crawling back to whatever dank hole he came from. The dog's safe now. A neighbor stepped in, took it in, and gave it a loving home. Alan? Who cares? He's gone. The street doesn't stink like raw sewage anymore, and peace has finally returned to the neighborhood. He ruined his own life through a mix of arrogance, laziness, and complete delusion. Alan had every opportunity to do the bare minimum, maintain his property, fix his roof, treat his dog like a living creature, but instead he chose to be a festering wound on the neighborhood. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.